young people to get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
You may be asking yourself, who is John Lewis? What makes a great leader? And why is John Lewis the greatest leader of all time? The greatest leaders are those who are willing to step up to fill a void when there is a great need for leadership. In his own words, he explains why the greatest leaders are those who created or participated in a movement.
When you see someone emerge from a movement, from a cause, in my estimation, I think it's perhaps much more authentic, much more real when someone emerge out of a struggle.
The greatest leaders are those who are authentic and emerge from a struggle. Now, let's play a quick game of Never Have I Ever. I know this seems weird, but please, just bear with me for a second. Never Have I Ever was born and raised in Troy, Alabama. Never have I ever preached to chickens. Never have I ever organized student sit-in demonstrations in Nashville, Tennessee. Never have I ever volunteered as a freedom rider at 21 years old. Never have I ever been chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Never have I ever had my skull fractured during a voting rights march in Selma. Never have I ever been the youngest speaker at the March on Washington. Never have I ever been arrested more than 40 times protesting segregation. Never have I ever been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Never have I ever written a graphic novel based on my life. Is everyone still in? Well, a man by the name of John Lewis would be the first one out. His life proves he is the greatest leader of all time.
John Lewis was born on February 21st, 1940, outside Troy, Alabama. Growing up as a young boy in the 40s and 50s, Lewis was directly affected by segregation. In his teens, Lewis began listening to the great sermons spoken by MLK. These sermons and speeches inspired Lewis to act for the changes that him, his brothers, and his sisters so eagerly desired. In 1957, Lewis left Alabama and headed to Nashville, Tennessee, where he attended the American Baptist Theological Seminary. Here, Lewis learned about nonviolent protests and helped organize sit-ins at segregated lunch counters at an age of only 17. Being arrested during these sit-ins, Lewis continued in his dream for equality. Lewis's next step towards equality occurred when he went to participate in the Freedom Rides of 1961. Here, Lewis, along with many others, were beaten and arrested for protesting. Lewis then became the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in 1963. In that same year, Lewis became one of the Big Six leaders of the Civil Rights Movement. These Big Six leaders included Whitney Young, A. Philip Randolph, Martin Luther King Jr., James Farmer, and Roy Wilkins. At an age of only 23, Lewis was the youngest Big Six leader and helped plan the March on Washington. After the March on Washington, Lewis, along with others, led a march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. On this march, marchers were attacked by state troopers. In this attack, Lewis was severely beaten, suffering a fractured skull. Lewis continued to work towards equality. He became the director of Voter Education Project in 1970. He won a seat on the Atlanta City Council in 1981. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 1986. He then represented Georgia's 5th District, being one of the most respected members of Congress. Lewis has worked towards improving health care, fighting poverty, and improving education. He also oversaw multiple renewals of the Voting Rights Act. He has fought to address gun violence and find ways to combat it. In December 2019, Lewis announced that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Lewis sadly passed away on July 17, 2020. He was 80 years old.
Even though John Lewis has sadly passed away, his legacy illustrates his determination and perseverance to fight for civil rights, voting rights, as well as the preservation of African American history. For 15 years, Lewis introduced the Museum Bill in every session of Congress to create the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. He said, "Giving up on dreams is not an option. This museum is a dream come true." With everything he did to strive for equality, Lewis left a legacy. Lewis inspired many with his drive and determination towards civil rights. He helped pave the way for future fighters, was a voice for millions, and led the beginning of change. A great leader is someone who inspires and motivates others to be their best. A great leader is someone who fights for the rights of others. A great leader is someone who challenges others to question the status quo. He gave his life for equality. He put all he had to pave a way for future generations. From the time he was a teenage boy to his death, Lewis fought. He fought for equality, to make a better America. He fought for others so that they might see a better tomorrow. John Lewis was a fighter, a peaceful one, but nonetheless a fighter. Remember John Lewis with this quote: "You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Release the need to hate, to harbor division, and the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness, hold only love, only peace in your heart, knowing that the battle of good to overcome evil is already won." Remember John Lewis, the greatest leader of all time, not only as a fighter, but as a person who chose to be happy during times of adversity.